Welcome, Terry. Welcome, Zoha. How are we doing, guys? You know what,
Hi, Chris.
Let me change my goofy background here.
No, I'm doing a class.
All right.
I have a question, Chris.
I have an answer for the next 5 minutes.
Thank you. Is it better to do it on my phone and keep my laptop next to me?
Yes, that would probably be the easiest way to do it if you want to follow along. Yep.
Okay.
So that way you don't have all the Zoom windows all over your screen and bouncing around and things get lost. That's why it's great working with a dual monitor setup is great for this stuff.
I haven't actually done it, but I don't know if I really need the information right now. The only problem with my phone is I don't know, the video doesn't work.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
You know those problems I've been having with the phone? I'm hoping I can meet up with you and you can help me figure it out.
Yeah, it sounds like you got something going on with your phone. So yeah, we can. When we're back in the office, I'd be glad to help you out with that.
Thank you.
Sometime in the near future, I'm not sure when exactly. I don't have it scheduled, but I'm going to start coming back like 2 days a week, and then 3 days a week, and then kind of slowly transition that way to make sure it's safe.
Absolutely.
So what time do we have right now? It is 3:57. We got 3 minutes before we get started. We got some great stuff to cover here. And I'm sure we have a plethora of questions. So Kevin, thank you for joining us. It's good to see you.
Yes, sir.
I loved hearing that you were playing around in referrals today. I love it when anyone's playing around with command. It's just, I love learning. That's what I love about my job. I get to help people learn. Let's see. All right, we got 4 in here, 5 including me. I know more people need to learn DocuSign. We still have a minute for them to start flooding in. There we go. We got Karen coming in, and it is Florida, so I do expect everyone to be late to a degree. We're in tropical time, right?
It's called Indian Standard Time.
So I need to start telling everyone that the class starts at 3:45, and then everyone's going to be right on time.
Yeah.
Welcome, Jim. I don't think I've had you in my class before, so it's good to see a new face.
Welcome.
Awesome. They're flooding in now. Okay, so it is 4 o'clock, and we're going to get started. Just a question. I've got text messages popping up on my screen. I'm just wondering if any of you actually see those text messages.
Nope.
Good. Okay, I didn't think you did. Now I'm putting my computer on Do Not Disturb. Fantastic. So we are going to be talking about DocuSign today. Welcome, everyone. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Chris Orsini. I am the Director of Technology for Keller Williams in East Boca, and I also serve Coastal Partners up in Palm Beach. And like I said, we're talking about DocuSign today. So first, I just want to just let you guys know what the timeline looks like going forward. So as you all probably saw in the text message or any emails that I've sent out, we are .loop is being sunsetted or cut off on July 1st. So what does that mean? That means that you will no longer be able to create new loops. You will, however, be able to continue to access that account and access all of your old data. They're legally required to allow you to access all of your forms and files for the next 7 years, I believe. So you do not have to worry about losing your documents, although I would recommend backing them up in some way, shape, or form. You can continue, if you so desire, to continue to pay for .loop if you wanted to, but I would advise against it for two reasons. One, DocuSign is free, so I would never recommend for you to pay, spend money unnecessarily. Second, and this is even bigger in my mind, is .loop is owned by Zillow, and currently with our partnership, I guess, with .loop, we're under a data pledge, meaning that .loop or Zillow are not allowed to use our data. They're just holding it, but they cannot access it. Now, if you go and continue an account with .loop after this, you are outside of this data pledge, meaning Zillow can access your data. So we don't want to be paying our competitor to give them data. And if you're wondering how they use it, I don't know all of the aspects, but I know specifically they do use it to create Zestimates. That's how they've created Zestimates, is pulling that data out of your loops. So any questions on that before I get started? No? Okay, cool. So just so you guys know, you are free to unmute and stop me and ask me questions along the way. I'm happy to answer them. I'm used to getting interrupted frequently in person, and then we hopped on Zoom and then people just were quiet. So feel free to stop me, ask questions. I want to be as clear as possible. I want to set you all up for success come July 1st. So Wednesdays, I teach on opportunities every single Wednesday. By the way, I see a lot of people with your cameras on. That's awesome. I love it. So any of you don't, feel free to turn your cameras on. It's much better teaching to faces. I can also kind of start seeing in your eyes when I'm not communicating well enough for you to understand. So that helps me as well. So don't hold back your facial expressions as well. So every Wednesday I teach opportunities. And so if you're not too familiar with it, come see me on Wednesday. But last Wednesday, we had the pleasure of having Andrew in our class. And so I created an opportunity for Andrew. And we also created the DocuSign room. So in this process, in order to access your documents, you need to create an opportunity first, and then go into the opportunity and click Go to Transaction. Well, first it'll say Start a Transaction. It'll be a dark gray button that says Start a Transaction. You'll click on that button, and you'll get the options. If you have .loop connected, you'll get the option between .loop or DocuSign. Of course, we're going to choose DocuSign in this case. One thing I would like to make clear, which I do clarify on my opportunities class, but I have a lot of you here that aren't there. So I will clarify that really quick. So previously we were operating both compliance and document management or forms and e-signature inside of .loop. So this is what we were this is how our system looked. And these are the three main functions that are happening in opportunities: compliance, forms and e-signature, and commissions. So up until recently, it was .loop for compliance, as well as forms and e-signature, and green sheets for commissions. Now, the problem with this is now we're taking two different functions and putting them into one system where they should be separated. So what we have done is now we have command for compliance. And so inside command, in opportunities, all you're doing is compliance. You are not pulling forms. You are not getting e-signature. You are not managing your documents. You are simply, this is simply the place where you're putting final documents for Rosette to either give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Now, forms and e-signature, like I said, is now in DocuSign. So you're going to go into DocuSign to pull your forms, to fill them out, to get them signed. But you are not going to submit these forms to compliance inside of DocuSign. And once we have gotten these two functions ironed out and we're running smoothly in them as a market center, we are going to introduce commissions and command and move away from green sheets. What's great about commissions and command is everything you're doing over here in in your opportunity is now going to carry over into commissions and auto populate. So you're going to have a lot less work to submit your commission request and get your DA. So let's use that as an incentive to get our compliance and document management in order, so we can get that commissions. And like I said, what we've done is severed those two systems, those two functions into two systems the way it really should be. So this way, compliance isn't looking at all your documents. They're simply looking at the documents that they need to see. So we've already nixed .loop for compliance. We're no longer accepting .loop compliance in .loop. And so soon, July 1st, we will no longer be have access to .loop for new loops for forms and e-signature. Did that help clarify that a little bit? I know a lot of people have a challenge grasping that, and that's probably one of the biggest hurdles, is understanding that here is compliance, what we're looking at, and then documents and document management, forms and e-signatures, and DocuSign. So, so we're going to click on Go to Transaction.
I have a quick question.
I have a quick answer.
Okay. The existing transaction that we already have in .loop.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have to move it to command, or that automatically will be in command?
It depends on what your objective is. So if it's a completed transaction, if it's something that's closed, so ongoing, you will need to utilize command for compliance. So you can continue finishing that loop out. Now that brings up another point. After July 1st, you'll be able to finish out any open loops, but in .loop. So if you have an ongoing loop right now, you will need to get those documents from .loop and into command. So there's a couple ways to do that. There's an import function. So if you go out to opportunities here, there's an import function right here where you can import your loop into command, or you can simply create the opportunity, download the forms from the documents from .loop, and then upload them into command manually.
Okay.
Chris, one more quick question.
Yes.
So July 1st, all our files that we have in all our transactions that we have in .loop, we'll have access to our files.
Correct. Yes, they'll remain in there. They're legally required to allow us
so
to
we'll
access
have that
them
for as long as we need it. I mean, as long as we want.
Yeah, I know legally it's 7 years, but based on what I've heard, we will have indefinite access.
Okay. Okay.
So you don't need to worry right off the bat. Our concern right now should just be current business and upcoming business. Anything past and closed, you can kind of breathe on that for a while, and we can get to that once we get over this hump.
But for example, once after July 1st, you won't have the ability to create a new loop.
Correct.
Okay.
But if you have a current open loop, so if you're mid-transaction after July 1st, you'll be able to wrap that up.
Okay.
So, yes.
So some of us have loops as far back as 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not being told they're going to purge everything over 7 years yet?
No, I have not heard anything about purging over 7 years. I haven't heard a definite statement on that, but what I have, here's what I know. When KWRI decided to cut their tie with .loop, they said that we would be able to access our documents indefinitely.
Okay, thank you.
Now the region continued our contract with .loop, so
right.
I don't believe that changed anything.
Right.
But also everything, .loop did take all the KWRI or Keller Williams data nationwide and put it into a separate Amazon server for us.
Got it.
So it will be accessible one way or the other.
Okay.
So, you know what? I'm just going to create a fresh opportunity since I came out here. I'm not going to walk through the steps, but since Sharon was the last one to give me a question, I will use her as my example. And I'm creating the opportunity. So let's assume that I just got out of an appointment with Sharon, excuse me, and she calls me up and says, hey, Chris, I'd love to sign that listing agreement. Fantastic. So the first thing we need to do in this opportunity, we have to pick a checklist type. It's going to be residential. And I'm blasting through this lightning speed at this point because this is all covered on Wednesday's class. So come back on Wednesday at 4 for an in-depth on this. So I want to get to that that listing agreement. So I'm going to go click start a transaction. As I mentioned, you can either choose DocuSign or .loop, but I'm going to go into DocuSign because that's what we're teaching today. So what's happening now is it is creating a DocuSign room. This would be the DocuSign equivalent of a loop. So now I'm going to click, it has created the room. Usually opens the other tab. I'm not sure why it didn't, but I'll click go to transaction and it's going to open DocuSign in another tab. So now what's great is we have two tabs open so we can visually understand that, hey, over here I'm doing compliance, over here is just documents. Now, DocuSign will make you log in once a day. It's part of their security feature. And it's great to have saved passwords. So once you log in, the first place it's going to take you is documents. So you'll see we have tabs up here similar to what we had in Command, but we have documents. Now, your initial, so the first thing you're going to want to do is start adding documents. But let's take a breather and make sure that all our data is in here. So if we click on details here, this is where we can input all the data we want to auto-populate into forms. Now, currently, Command will auto-populate the client information for us, as well as the location if it has been selected from listings. I didn't select a location, so there is no address in there, but Sharon's data is in here. If you guys want to write it down, send her some referrals. Now, if we want to add any data, we would click Edit, the blue Edit button at the top right. I'm going to click that, and now you'll see it's turned everything into editable fields. So I'm going to go in here and just put a phony address, 123 Main Street, Boca Raton. Let's do 33431. State, we'll put Florida, and put in whatever other information we'd like to have in here auto-populate. Then I'll click Save, and now it will save that data in here. Now we're going to go over to documents. Now it's time to start pulling the documents that we want to have signed. If you have never been in here before, it's going to ask you to put in your NRDS ID number in order to access your Florida Association of Realtors forms. If it does not ask you for that NRDS ID number and you don't have access to those forms, you'll want to click on your name in the top right corner or your face and go into Preferences. and click integrations here. And this is where you can add your NRDS ID and your association, which would be Florida Association of Realtors. I don't have an NRDS ID, so I won't be demoing any of the state forms, but I do have access to our office forms. So I'm going to jump back to where I was previously. And just so you know, you do have to have your exact same name in DocuSign as you do on your license, or it will not connect. So if you have a dash in your name, if you have an LLC or PA, you've got to make sure they're the same in both.
Question.
Yes, Tony.
Because you helped me. Remember, I was having problems getting into DocuSign a while back, and you helped me resolve the problem.
Vaguely, I don't remember exactly what the problem was.
Remember, I couldn't get in. It wasn't allowing me to get in. You helped me. Remember, you called their tech line, their tech support.
Yeah, so there are, if you do have, if you haven't set up a DocuSign account yet, you'll need to do that through command.
But I believe you did it for me already.
I did help you out. Now, if anyone else runs into that, if you've had a previous DocuSign account, you will need to contact DocuSign directly, and they will iron that out for you. I don't have the number offhand. I do have it somewhere. So if you do need that, you can reach out to me. I can get you their phone number. Just make sure when you talk to them, you tell them that you're with Keller Williams and you want to talk to someone who's familiar with DocuSign rooms, because there are different versions of DocuSign and support in both areas.
Where in command do you set it up?
Great question, Jim. So you would click on your name in the top right corner. You would click settings. And when you go into settings, it's going to be your first connection here. You'll see DocuSign and you'll just click connect account and go through the process. What it's going to do is email you an account setup email. You set up that account and you choose a password, all of that. And then you'll need to authorize the connection here. So you'll have to click connect here, go through the steps in the email, and then come back here and click authorize, telling DocuSign it is okay to share data with command.
Thank you.
And then you'll be all set up. No, thank you. That's something I usually teach right at the beginning, and I forgot to go over that. So let's start adding documents. You guys ready?
Yep.
Cool. So we're going to do so by clicking the add button at the top right corner, and we're going to choose DocuSign Forms. Now we're going to get this drop down, and it defaults to Forms Library. And if we look in the Forms Library, you'll see the Office Forms as well as FAR. If we click that, we get every single form that's in either of those categories. So for this, maybe I'd want to pull up the addendum to the listing agreement. But can anyone guess what question I usually get asked at this point? Usually someone pipes up. Barbara?
Where the FAR bar?
No, I don't get FAR bar because I don't have a license and I'm not.
Oh,
So, but you will have FAR bar in here as well.
okay.
So do you want to give it a shot, Tony?
So the question would be, how come all the documents don't automatically populate? For example, if it's a listing in .loop, all you'd have to do is start a new loop. What kind of loop? A listing loop, and it would drop all the documents you need in there, most of them.
Yep.
And then you wouldn't have to worry about searching for your documents.
Yep. So yeah. So usually when I'm teaching DocuSign, I'll get the in .loop. Yeah.
Well, in
so
.loop.
yeah, we heard you. And so now we have DocuSign form groups, and you can click on that. And in this drop down, we have buyer forms, commercial, CRISP, FAR, listing, office, and rental forms. They won't be duplicated like this. I'm in both market centers, so I see it for both. So this is a listing, so I just select listing forms, and we have the listing forms. You will also have FAR forms in there. Again, I don't get access to those.
So that's pretty good.
Yep.
Is this something new that they just added, or was this originally the way it was set up?
I set this up just before we went on quarantine. So we've had this for a little bit.
Okay.
So from here, you can select all or just select the ones that you want. I'll just go ahead and select all and click add.
Well, why are the agreements different for the two market centers? I mean, isn't it a statewide thing?
So that's a great question. The state forms are the same, which I don't have access to, but the office forms, and I'll show you an example here. They have the DBA in the form.
Oh,
So it'll say up here Keller Williams Realty Services, where your forms will say Keller Williams Coastal Partners. That is the only difference.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great question. So when you add them, you'll see that they populate in here. And if you don't see a thumbnail, or if you don't see a thumbnail of what the form is, and rather if there's just like a document icon on it, you'll want to refresh the page until you see this thumbnail. Otherwise, you won't get full access to the features like, well, it looks like I don't have it here. See, you'll see it doesn't allow me to print or download. If I refresh the page, it'll allow me to print or download. So if you really need that and it's not showing up, just simply refresh and you'll see download and print are now there. So I am going to, let's just assume I want to send out the KW addendum to the listing agreement. So I will click on that form and it's going to open up. Now, we're starting to work on documents. And this is where people who are familiar with dotloop start getting a little anxious. And they start asking me questions and start telling me to hold on. We haven't done signatures. So the workflow is a little different here in DocuSign than it is in dotloop. Just keep in mind, signatures are the very last thing that we will work on before we send this document out. So just bear with me. All right. So here we go. We've got the KW addendum to the listing agreement, and you'll notice that the address that I put in is auto-populated. And anywhere there's a gray box, we can click and type. So what is today? Today's the 12th. And I've got to say this. I know most of you already know this, but I got to say this. Don't abbreviate 2020 to 20, because then someone can go in and make it any year that they want in this decade. So we have now radio buttons here that we can go and click on. So we can select these radio buttons, which, by the way, does anyone know the difference between a radio button and a checkbox? Yes, Sharon. You're muted.
Checkbox, you could check multiple ones. Radio buttons, you can only check one or the other.
Correct.
It's neither or.
Yep. So it's multiple choice, single answer, or multiple choice, multiple answer. And a radio button's a circle, and a checkbox is a box, clearly. So I'm going to go through and just say that Sharon is very agreeable and is just agreeing to all these terms. And you'll notice we have initial and signature fields on this document, but they're not actually in there. We can't do anything with signature. What is going on? I'm sorry, someone is blowing up the, let me see.
Chris,
Yes.
question on, so our clients are supposed to be checking those check boxes off themselves. So is that something that can be enabled for the client to do also?
Yes, I'll show you how to do that. I'm sorry, I just had someone join this who is unwelcome. Please ignore the chat for a second. I'm listening now. If anyone has a question.
I think you already got my question.
Yes. So can you add those for them to edit? Yes, you have that ability. And I'll show you once we get there. That would be in the same area that we do
I have one
signatures.
quick question.
I have one quick answer.
Okay, so this is regarding forms. So
Mhm.
I want to bring up the seller's disclosure. So we
Okay.
should be able to bring up the seller's disclosure document into the listing documents, if I'm not mistaken. And my question is I've seen other real estate companies allow the seller to complete the seller's disclosure using the radio buttons. However, in DotLoop, it was unable to do that. It makes it a lot easier when you can send the seller's disclosure, and he can sign it and fill it out right there, rather than having to print it out and filling it out by hand and doing all that. So my question is will the seller's disclosure, will the radio buttons be enabled on the seller's disclosure? Or
So
the checkbox, whatever it is.
so if they're in the form, you would select them yourselves here, or the answer to that would also be the answer to Karen's question. We can go and put those in manually, and the client can select those themselves.
Because supposedly the reason why we weren't able to do it before is because Andrew didn't want client to do it that way. He thought maybe that the agent might fill it out for the client.
Tony,
But at any rate,
Tony, I don't think you're talking about the seller's disclosure. There were no radio buttons in the seller's disclosure. You're talking about the lead-based paint.
No, sorry. I'm talking about the seller's disclosure on DotLoop.
I understand, but there's no radio buttons on the seller's disclosure.
Then not, okay.
The checkboxes.
Radio button. I'm talking about the checkbox then.
Oh, the checkbox fields. Yeah. It didn't
So
allow us
in DotLoop, you were not able to check the box off.
Client was able to do it.
The client was able to do it.
Yeah, we were not able to do it because we're not supposed to fill those out. The client was able to do it.
The client was. We couldn't.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter.
So
that.
so I never was aware of that. When I tried to test it and check it, and I saw that I couldn't put a check in there. Well,
Right.
I assumed that the client wasn't able to do it either.
Right. No,
Yeah, you had to send it. You had to send it to the client a different way. But it doesn't matter now because we're not going to be using it.
Okay, so good. I'm sorry that I went off track here, but you clarified something for me, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Awesome. So now that we've gone in and edited this to, we will click save and close, and it will save the edits we've done to this form. Now, there is this people tab, and some people get hung up on it. If you want to add anyone, any personal data, any people data, you want to do it in details. This people tab is just to actually add people to the room so they can also manage the form. So this would be something you would maybe use for like a transaction coordinator or something, but you would want to stick to details for any client data or anything like that. Also, keep in mind, anybody that you do add to the people section will get continual emails for everything happening in this room. So you don't want your client to get an email with everything you do. So we're going to move on to envelopes now. Envelopes is where we are going to send off this document to be signed. So we'll click on envelopes, and we'll click new or add new at the top right to create a new envelope. So in here, the first thing is to name the envelope. This name is only for your eyes. Your client is not going to see the name of this envelope. So name it with whatever naming convention that you are familiar with. I do recommend you name them because there aren't a lot of indicators as to which envelope is which and what they have in them. So just state that here. So I'm going to be using the KW addendum to the listing agreement. So I'm going to call it Koala. And then we want to add these documents to the envelope. We want to fill our envelope. So we will click Room Docs. And this is where we will pull those forms that we had added to our room. Now, the KW addendum to the listing agreement is what we were working on. So I'm just going to select that one, but we can select as many as we want. It doesn't have to just be one document at a time. Something we can also do, and this would be kind of a DocuSign 2.0 class, is we can go and create our own templates. If you do have some things that you always have filled out, you can go and create your own templates and pull them in that way. But we're going to stick with Room Docs for now. Next is adding the recipients. So this is really big, and this is what I'd say 75% of my calls about DocuSign end up being, is they forgot to choose pre-tagged roles. So pre-tagged roles, you didn't have to raise your hand, but thank you, Barbara. So pre-tagged roles will assign your client or whoever you choose to the signature fields that are already populated in the document. So you don't have to go in and place every single signature field. So I'm going to say seller 1 is Sharon Arnett, and then listing agent would be me. Now, say this client is not in your details. You forgot to add them to your details. You can always select the role and not select a recipient, and then type in the name and email address. And I'll show you that now. I'll click Add Selected, and you'll notice it populated seller 1 with Sharon Arnett, listing agent with myself, and then seller 2 is blank, and I can fill in those details. So something that we can do in DocuSign that we couldn't do in Dotloop. Say, for instance, Sharon and her husband were selling their property, but Sharon's husband did not have an email address. We can send it both to the same email address.
That's great.
Now, if we wanted to remove someone, we can simply click the X and it removes that recipient. And now we also have signing order. So say that I, as a listing agent, wanted to sign this prior to sending it to the client. I can set the client as 2. And now it will go in this order. It will send it to me. As soon as I sign it, it's going to send it out to seller 2. Another great use for this is, say you have a transaction coordinator that wants to receive the final version of the document. Something you could do is click Add Recipient and choose email address. Type in their information. Let's say transaction coordinator, tc@tc.com. And here where it says needs to sign, we can click on that and just say receives a copy. Now in this signing order, does anyone see any problems with this signing order here?
Yeah,
because
there's 2 2s.
Yep. So as soon as the listing agent signs it, both the seller and the transaction coordinator will get it. So the transaction coordinator is not actually receiving the final version of the document. So we just want to make her or him 3. And so that transaction coordinator will get a copy as soon as it's completed.
So if you're sending to a husband and wife, then you would make them both the same order?
Correct. Yeah. So if you have ones, it'll go all out at the same time.
Okay.
Whoever has the same number.
And they can sign from the same computer at the same time.
Right after each other. 2 people couldn't physically sign at the same time.
Yeah, but actually, I mean, if the husband wanted to sign for the wife, the husband can just go ahead and click for both of them, correct?
Yes, that's possible. That's not something we want to encourage, but it is possible. Yes.
Well, I'm just throwing that out there. Either one can do it.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, we will create the email message so we can give them the subject. So please DocuSign listing addendum, and put the email email message in there. And next, is anyone getting anxious right now?
I have a quick question.
Not
Okay, you have a
particularly.
quick. Yes.
If I'm currently have a transaction where it's 4 people as a sellers, where I can add more sellers here.
Okay, that's a great question. So I'm going to just remove this transaction coordinator. And what we can do, of course, the documents are pre-tagged with up to 2 buyers or sellers. So if we have a third or fourth, we would have to click add an email address. So add recipient and then add email address and put their name in. So I'll just call this person seller3 and seller3@email.com. And then we'll have to add their signature fields in. We'll have to do that manually. So the reason I asked if any of you are getting anxious is because usually dot loopers get really anxious at this point because we've just typed up an email message and we're going to hit next. And so we think that it's going to send the email out. It's not just yet because remember, what did I say is the last step? Signatures. Jim, did you have a question?
No, I was going to ask you about when they create the e-signature.
Okay. There we go. So we're going to click next. It's that bright yellow button in the top right corner. And that's going to take us to our signature editor, which is our very last step. And I'll let it load, get some water. So I'm going to take a second to explain what we're looking at here. On the left, we have our signature fields where we can add these to our document if we want. Up at the top, this dropdown allows us to switch between the different recipients. In the center, of course, we have our document. And on the right, we have a preview of the document. This is great if you have a really long document with a lot of pages. This allows you to kind of skim through the thumbnails pretty easily. But when you select a field, this will change into the field options. So the first thing I like to point out in this document is, they actually fixed something. These fields had been shifted. They shifted them back. Great. So one thing I love to point out in this document specifically is, we'll notice here it says, please check an initial only one. Now, it has both initial fields in here. But there's something different about these initial fields. They're translucent rather than solid blue. They have the blue outline, but they're white. Does anyone know what that would mean? Why that they're?
Well, you can only assign one of them.
No, that's not why. They're both assigned to seller 1 or Sharon. Anyone know why a field would be translucent or white rather than solid?
Is it optional?
There we go. Got it, Kathy. So if it just has the colored outline and it's not solid color, then it means it's optional. Now, if we get to this point, if your client gets to this point, what do you think is going to happen when they see 2 initial fields?
They're going to do them both.
Yep. They're either going to do both or neither, and probably going to call you and ask you why. So what I suggest everyone do is click on the one they do not want them to sign, and then just hit the delete key on your keyboard and it disappears.
There you go.
So there, we've narrowed it down to 1, but this is still optional. And I bet you a number of clients are still going to call you up and say, this initial field is optional. Do I need to sign there? So let's save one more phone call and we can select it. And you'll notice on the right, when I select it, this options drawer slides out. So I'm going to deselect, and you'll notice we're back to thumbnails, and selected, we get our options. And right here, we can just click required field. And you'll notice when I click it, it turns solid blue, and now it's required. And we have no questions. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Now, Tony and Karen, you had both asked about putting in maybe radio buttons or checkboxes for the client to use. Now we would select the client. So I'll have Sharon selected. And I love that it's color coded. So I know that everything blue is Sharon, everything yellow is me, and everything purple is seller 3, which I will get to after this. So you'll see we have the checkbox and radio button options here. So we can simply drag and drop these over the sections we want them to be able to select. And now they can select those themselves. Does that make sense?
Sorry, how can you select the colors?
So the colors are assigned to each person. So if we want to change we don't have control over which
But the colors show up automatically, and then
correct.
we decide. Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
the colors show up automatically, and then we can decide which person
Ah.
we want to edit, and we can know based on the color.
Okay.
And of course, we have now. Say it's a checkbox, and we have 3 options. We can just click this plus button and add as many checkboxes as we want. Same function for radio buttons. We can add more radio buttons if we want.
I usually fill this form out for the client.
That's how it's functioning right now. You'll see there's X's where I went and checked it off. Yeah. Now, next, the question of what if we have a 3rd, 4th, 5th, 27th seller? What do we do with them? So I added just a recipient. It's not a pre-tagged role because that role doesn't exist. So what I would do is select the seller 3, and I can pull in a 3rd initial field, and I'll just put it over here, assuming that there was already one there. I will pull in a 3rd seller field and pull in a 3rd seller date. If we need their name anywhere, we also have the name field and anything else. It's simple enough, right?
But you didn't create a 3rd buyer though, actually, or did you already?
Well, yeah, I created this person as buyer 3 or seller 3.
I got you.
I never created a seller 2.
Normally you would do this in your contacts to start with in opportunities. If there was
actually, that's a great question. In opportunities, you can only have up to 2 clients in there at a time. So you would just choose whoever the 2 primary are.
I got you. And then you would have to do this step on the contract.
Correct. Yes.
And
you go in and
DocuSign.
Yep, and go in and add these, and it's simple enough. I love the drag and drop feature. It's
but you could
very
still,
easy.
You could still add another contact for that 3rd buyer in your contacts.
Yes, in contacts. Yep, you can have as many as you want. That 3rd one just won't be linked to the opportunity.
I got you.
So the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th sellers are going to be the same color?
No, every new client you create will have, every new recipient you create in DocuSign will get a new color. Right. So you'll never have 2 of the same colors. So if I were to go back, I'm going to click back, and I'm just going to add a couple other people just for kicks and giggles to show. Where do we go? So I'm going to add the seller 2 and assign it to admin, and then add a seller 4. And then we'll go next. And once this loads, so they all have a different color. And you'll notice we also have, it then also fills in the other seller. And keep in mind what I did here with deleting the one and making it required. You'll have to do that for both parties. And I can go along and find everyone else and add all those other initial fields and signature fields. We can also resize the fields, just so you know. So if we can make these tiny to put off on the side, we can select multiples and move them around together. A lot of functions, a lot of cool functions we can do in here. The date. So Sharon, would you mind if I sent this to you and you sign it so we can see what it's like to have a completed document?
Where do you go to get them to create an e-signature?
So that's a great question. So I'm just going in here and deleting all the extra recipients I put on there, and I'm going to send it out, and you'll see. So we now have it back it's just listing agent and just seller one. So to send it, we click send. If you wanted to preview it and see what the experience is like, you can click recipient preview up at the top there, and you'll get to see the signature preview. There we go. And so this is the experience they will have. They'll click start. Oh, did it go? I'm sorry.
I'm not seeing it having arrived yet.
Oh, I didn't send it just yet.
Oh, well, no wonder. Okay.
Yeah. So I was just showing the recipient preview, and then I'll send it. So you can make sure it's the proper experience for your client. You can view it, and they would click start. It's going to take them down to where they need to sign. And then.
So, Chris, I could share my screen and you can watch me sign it if you want.
Well, I'm the first one to sign it. So I'm set on number one. So I'll show that process.
Okay.
So I'm going to click send, and DocuSign is really, really fast. And so you'll see that I need to sign the document. So it's giving me the option to sign now. So I'll click sign now. And my phone already vibrated with 2 emails, because I sent it, and one because I viewed it. And now I'm going to click continue, click start, and sign it as the agent. And now once I click finish, Sharon's going to get an email requesting a signature. And just what you saw there is exactly what the client's going to see. They get in the same user interface.
Got it.
Again, how does the client create their signature?
Once they get the email, DocuSign will prompt them to create it, so they can either select a pre-made signature, or they can actually draw one in with their trackpad or something.
So I'm opening this. Am I on?
Yep, I can hear you.
So I'm opening this for the first time, and I've never gone into DocuSign. So the first thing you have to do in the upper left is I agree to use electronic records and signatures. They have to do a checkbox. Then it allows me to click continue on the other side. Then which is in like a bold yellow. And then there's a bold yellow that says start. So you have to click start. And then it just pops me, just somewhat like .loop, the first field that I'm hitting, a box is popping up saying adopt your initials. So I can change those if I want to put SJA, and then it's got a preview of how your signature is going to look, and you can select a style, or you can draw your own signature. So I'm going to select a sassy style, and you go adopt an initial, and then finish. You have to hit finish. Then I've got a box that says save a copy of your document. So I would have to put in, if I want to save it, just like .loop, they don't have to create an account, but if you put in a password, they can create an account where they're saving it. I'm going to say no thanks, because I don't want it to get mixed up with my work DocuSign. You're all done.
Thank you. Now, as soon as she completed that, I got an email saying that it was completed. I got a total of 4 emails throughout this entire process. So, and they're right on top of things. So now we're in the envelopes tab, and you'll see this is the envelope I sent out named Koala. And I'm just going to refresh. And you'll see that it's now labeled green because it's been completed. If it is not green, if say you need to sign it, it'll be blue, and it'll be a different color if you're waiting on someone. I forget. It might still be blue. I forget exactly. Now, if we go to documents, you'll notice, and I don't know why it's in list view. There we go. In documents, you'll notice we now have an additional two documents in here. The completed signed PDF of the form. So you'll see it's just named KW 720 due, KW addendum to the listing agreement dash signed, but we still have the original form. So if we need to make any changes, we just click this original form.
I'm overwhelmed already.
Make those.
See this
Sorry.
proposal?
Make those changes and then send it out again.
Or
And when
if
it
the
comes,
other document- or if the other
when it-
document is correct, do we delete the first one?
oh, if you want to, yes, you can archive the first one. You can do that by right
Archive
clicking
it.
and choosing archive, or selecting multiples and choosing archive. Did I
I got
actually? So once it's signed, we have to keep record of it. We can't actually just delete
I
it.
hear you.
Now we also have this
No,
certification
but I was
here.
talking about the original one that had your signature on it, but not the seller's signature. So you archived it.
No, so I never actually, it doesn't actually send me any documents until all parties have completed it. So I don't get a version with just my signature on it. I only get a version.
I understand. Thank you.
And you'll see here, it's just a standard PDF and it has the signatures on here. By the way, guys, you should start teaching DocuSign. It's a great way to get listings. Just kidding. Now, this document here, it's the certification document, and this is just verifying that these are valid signatures. So make sure to not delete it, but you don't have to do anything with it. That's not something you have to submit anywhere. We just need to have it with.
Sometimes they'll ask you
transaction.
if you're doing a bank or a foreclosure or something like that, they'll ask you for it.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, there might be a third party that would ask you, but us in the market center, we're not going to need that. But make sure to have it. So we've just completed a document in DocuSign, and we've got 8 minutes left. So the last step of this is we need to submit it for compliance, right? So where do I need to go to submit this for compliance?
Actions.
Back to transactions.
Wasn't exactly the answer, but you're going in the right direction.
Well, you need to bring it back into command.
There we go. Thank you, Tony. So remember, compliance is no longer in our forms and e-signature system. It's only in command. So you'll see we have command over here in this tab. So we just click on this tab and I need to upload the KW addendum to the listing agreement. So I'm going to click add file. And hey, look, we have a DocuSign option here. We select this. We have the list of all of the documents that we have in our room. And we have our KW addendum to the listing agreement dash signed PDF right here. I'll select it, click assign, and we've now brought it into command and we can submit this to compliance or submit this to the market center for compliance. And there we go. Any questions on this?
Chris, I have a question.
I have an answer.
If you resend a document with some corrections, say, does it drop off all the signatures and the dates again are redone?
So if you need to resend a document, you've got two options. One option is, like I had said, going into the original form and changing the data in that original form and sending it back out. And that's going to be a totally fresh signature. Now, if we wanted to just make one small change in maybe the PDF, we would have to put this into an envelope, add the recipients, and we're not going to be able to use pre-tagged roles because we have lost all the fields once it came back as a PDF. We would have to manually mark it up and then add any initial fields to initial those changes.
So how
Does
do
that
you
make
mark it
sense?
up?
So I saw that coming. So I'm going to just really quick jump into this. So we'll create a new envelope. We'll click Room Docs again. And you'll notice that here it's a different symbol than the form. So that way we know it's a PDF, just it's not a form, it's just a PDF. So I'm going to add that. And you'll see we don't have pre-tagged roles. I have to use email signature. And I'm just going to go test@test.com. And we're going to go into the signature editor. Now, this is where we make those edits. And we have, with our field editors on the side, we can do markup. So I can choose this markup tool and we can draw a line. And then we can add a text box here. And 1, 2, 4, 5 Main Street. And then we can add an initial field to verify. And then just send that out. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you
Barbara,
just just go over that real quick once more?
Yes, I'll just delete what
So
I
in other
just
words,
did.
the addendum to the listing agreement was already signed
Mhm.
by the seller,
Yep.
and returned it back to you, and now you notice that the address was wrong. So you're going to
Yes.
have it corrected.
So the easiest way would be, in my opinion, is to just change the original form and send it out again. But if you so desire to mark it up, you can do that by, sorry, I'm not doing my steps. Sorry. I'm not talking through it. We would click here where it says markup tools. So it's a little pencil icon, and then just choose line. And we click where we want the line to start. And then we drag it out and click it where we want it to end. And now we've added our line.
And it won't erase the signature.
No, because imagine this is as if you had just scanned a document into your computer. It's just a PDF with no smart data in there at all. There's no fields or anything. It's just a PDF and that's it.
So
how do you correct the right address to add it?
So you will click the standard fields, which is the first option up here. And then we have a text field. We would click that and add it either, wherever we want to. I'll put it here and choose, we can either double click inside the field here or come over here to type. I'll just do 1, 2, 4 Main Street. And then we need it to be initialed. So we'll just drag over an initial field. Does that make sense?
Chris, would you also put the date sign next to the initial? So it wouldn't be confused with other?
Oh, yeah, you could do date, just drag date signed over as well.
So the initial field doesn't have a date in it? It doesn't date?
No. No, so you'll see here we have the initial there and there's no date on it.
Huh.
So now that you've sent it into compliance and they wanted to change and you make a correction, how does compliance know there's a correction and the original document is not correct and this one is?
So what you can do now, let's go, whoops, I went the wrong way. We can say it goes to compliance. She rejects it because the address was wrong. So I have to go get the address corrected. And after we send it, we can't delete a document that's been submitted. What we can do is replace it. Let's assume that I submitted it and I'm clicking replace instead of remove. It would just be the same process. We click replace. We go to DocuSign and choose which document we want to replace it with. Maybe it's this one instead, and click assign, and then submit it again to be reviewed. And she will see, Rosette will be able to see the entire history of documents that's been there, so she can quickly kind of compare to the old one and see any notes, because she will have to give you, anytime we reject a document, we have to give you a reason why we reject it. So we'll know, okay, we rejected that because the address was incorrect, and then we can double check that the address
All
is
right, I have one quick question.
okay.
So I understand